Meeting is being live streamed. Preparing to live stream, setting up your meeting. And we are live on YouTube. Yes. Now we get rid of this.
I don't know if you want to pause it for a few minutes till we get, cut out the crap.
I'm not sure that you can pause. Can you pause it?
Yeah, I think you can.
Just like you would pause?
Yeah.
Really? Well, that's interesting to know. So our YouTube is paused. And we have Judy Walcott. All right. And where did Steve Kellerman go? We lost Steve Kellerman. Okay.
So they probably have the best collection of Sacco and Vanzetti. We're going to make it a lot better.
This is Jerry. These are our archivists. This is Simpson, who students now Native American people, okay? And he's an early childhood teacher. And before
I hope you get a chance to see the third floor too. This mountain of material books, those sort of in chaos.
Okay.
It also has this whole room that's Sacco and Vanzetti research. Jerry has done an amazing job of. He's here 3 days a week and just kind of putting it all together. Hopefully, a lot of it will go to the Boston Public Library, but right here it's just remarkable. Especially if you're interested in Italian anarchism and Sacco and Vanzetti. Hi,
that's Craig Simpson.
hi, Craig. How are you? Welcome. I saw you out in Newton. At the Indigenous Peoples' Day, yeah, you were on the booth next to us. Oh, that's right. That's right.
It's about Native American people.
Yeah. Were you at the day of mourning?
Yes.
2 days ago?
Yeah.
I was there.
Oh, wow.
You were there too?
Yeah.
How come we didn't see each other?
Surprise. Right.
Yeah, it was pretty crowded, and
2,000 people.
I think that's a little exaggerated.
That was Matoi.
Matoi? Yeah. Well, then it was 2,000 people.
So you're. Yes. I've been reading this book.
Okay. It is 11 a.m. and we call this meeting to order. It's not like it's a board meeting or something, but we're just trying to get people to come to order. Hello, everybody out in the virtual world as well as in the room. Hello. We're going to begin our Community Church of Boston meeting. By saying welcome and thank you for joining us. And I'm going to do something I need to do. Charlie, I don't know if you can do this, but can you unpause the YouTube? I just did, but for future reference, can the co-host, sorry about talking tech with Charlie while we were trying to get this solemn service started, but let's get this solemn and reverent and irreverent tribute started by lighting a candle. And it's kind of a funny thing with the people in the audience here. Maybe we want to turn around and face this way. I don't know. We haven't figured this all out. We're not going to have anybody on the flat screen, but as people come in, we say welcome to you. We have lit this candle, especially this morning, remembering Robert Datilio. Robert Datilio presente, presente, we say. We light this candle also to bring us together to send out our concern for Luis Guzman,
I just saw him walk by.
in Virginia, visiting his sister who is in the hospital. We're going to miss Luis's continental breakfast spread before the meeting and his luncheon after the meeting, but we will figure out how to have fellowship despite Luis's absence. We're thinking about you, Luis, and we miss you, and we hope your sister is on the mend as soon as that can be possible. We also think about the late Najma Naziat. We got news of her passing exactly a week ago. Najma was our tenant on the 5th floor of a community church for some 8 years before she suffered a pretty massive stroke. She was maybe 40 years old, and she was the director of Boston Youth Organizing Project, which had their meeting on our 5th floor, and they rented our space, which did leadership training for young people in the high schools near here, incredible radical leadership training. We miss Najma Naziat, and we say, Najma Naziat, presente, presente. Remarkable force of nature, fallen in her young years. We miss you, Najma. There'll be others to think about as we go into this meeting, but for now, so that we don't start a fire, I'm going to blow it out and put it down here. But we can pretend that it's burning throughout the meeting. I want to start with a reading from Eduardo Galeano, Children of the Days, the remarkable Uruguayan author who wrote this book. He wrote a lot in paragraph-long vignettes, and this one was one for each day of the year. So we, without even thinking about what the content is, we just open for that date and we read it. And today's reading is for November 27th, and it's titled "When the Waters of Rio de Janeiro Burned." In 1910, the mutiny by Brazil's sailors reached its climax. The rebels threatened the city of Rio de Janeiro with warning shots of cannon fire. No more lashings or we'll turn the city to rubble. On board warships, whippings were common fare, and the victims frequently ended up dead. After 5 days, the uprising triumphed. The whips were sent to the bottom of the ocean, and the pariahs of the sea paraded to the cheers of through Rio's streets. Sometime after that, the leader of the insurrection, João Candido, child of slaves, admiral by acclaim of his fellow mutineers, went back to being a regular sailor. Sometime after that, he was booted out of the service. Sometime after that, he was arrested. And sometime after that, he was locked away in an insane asylum. There is a monument to him, a song explains, in the worn-down stones of the docks. November 27th, when the waters of Rio de Janeiro burned. Or is it Rio de Janeiro in Portuguese? A couple of announcements before we start. We have some remarkable programs coming up. Next Sunday is Reverend Irene Monroe. You might have heard her podcast. It's called All Revved Up, and it's on the GBH podcast platform. There, she's also a frequent guest with her other Reverend, who's named Reverend Emmett Price, on the Jim and Marjorie show on GBH Friday mornings. She will be preaching at us or talking to us. I don't know exactly what. The week after that, we have Calla Walsh. Calla Walsh, age 18, remarkable, fully formed journalist and activist at that age. Calla is in Montreal at McGill University, and before she left, she had already done a bunch of really wonderful high school activism here in Boston around both Palestine as well as Cuba. She will be talking about her trip to a youth congress in Cuba. That's December 10th, if I'm not mistaken. And then after that is the one that we're all just really, it's all leading up to this. On December 18th, we will be conferring our annual Sacco and Vanzetti Award to the Holy Land Foundation. It's not a very well-known case, but the Holy Land Foundation has been chosen because of their case's remarkable resemblance to Sacco and Vanzetti. These were immigrants scapegoated in a time of American hysteria. Sacco and Vanzetti was after the Palmer raids and the hysteria about anarchism. The Holy Land Foundation, it was after 9/11 and hysteria about Muslims and hysteria about Palestinians. These were successful Palestinian businessmen who started a charity in the 90s that became the biggest Muslim charity in the United States, donated enormous in-kind materials to children in Gaza and the West Bank and other parts of the Middle East. Also did a lot of domestic charity here in the United States, did a huge blood drive for the Oklahoma City tragedy in 1996. And then September 11th happened, and the Holy Land Foundation was, the American U.S. government was in need of a scapegoat. And the Holy Land Foundation, as a Muslim charity, was closed down. Its founders all arrested, tried. The first trial was a hung jury. The second trial was guilty, and they went off to prison for very long prison time. We will be joined on December 18th by Miko Peled, who has written a book about the Holy Land Foundation 5, a remarkable, cutting-edge Israeli-American writer and blogger and author. He has spoken here to a pretty huge crowd that joined us that day. We will be joined also by family members of the imprisoned Holy Land Foundation gentlemen who are doing federal time. We will also be joined by Sami Al-Arian, who is was a Florida State University professor who met a similar fate to the Holy Land Foundation 5. Sami went through a long trial. His family had to endure 6 months while he was imprisoned and on trial. And eventually the same thing happened. He was sentenced, and the difference was that a few months later he was deported to Turkey, where he now holds a professorship in Istanbul, and he will join us as well as his daughter Lina Al-Arian, who works for a foundation that whose name escapes me. This is all new stuff, and she This is a legal foundation that represents political prisoners, like the Holy Land Foundation 5, like her father Sami, and others. And Lena lives in Easton, just south of here, and will be joining us live. We'll also be joined by David Rovics, who wrote a wonderful song about the Holy Land Foundation, and also by Garth Hewitt from England. So it will be a multi-continental event. And we are so looking forward to hosting these folks here in our auditorium. And that's on December 18th. Our Sacco and Vanzetti Award goes to the Holy Land Foundation. So we remember Robert D'Attilio. And I want to say at the outset that I feel like too much of this event is going to be you hearing me talk. And I hope that folks who are joining us today are preparing some of their memories of Bob so we can share them after we do this presentation. I want to just at the outset tell you that Bob became an important part of Community Church's life at the beginning of 2022 when we realized that we had access to all of the contents of his two-family house in Medford, and that among the contents of that house was a treasure of materials on the Sacco and Vanzetti case, was also a mountain of books about all the things that Bob was interested in, and we'll go through a lot of those things as we walk through some of what we have here in the auditorium from Bob and from his house, and we took it on ourselves, Jerry Kaplan and I, to move an enormous amount of stuff to some vacant rooms in this building. A lot of it is still there. A lot of it has gone out to several destinations, and we hope good destinations. But if a lot of it is still here, Jerry Kaplan, who is retired from Harvard University Press, has just done enormous enormous work in organizing the Sacco and Vanzetti materials, which are just huge and take up an entire room. And we're gonna talk to Jerry a little bit and walk through some of what we've been able to display of those materials. And we will also take a tour of some of that wealth of books, some of which will no longer be here pretty soon because we can't handle this mountain of books forever. But a lot of it will be part of our library up on the third floor. So here's about Robert D'Attilio. It's from his resume. How's that for a loving obituary to read his resume? Born March 26, 1935, of Italian immigrant parents, attended 12 years of public schools in Medford and graduated in 1952. Trained as an electrical engineer at MIT between 52 and 56, and worked as a researcher from 1957 to 67 for MIT and Raytheon, publishing one scientific note that's called Transactions of Information Theory, July 1964, from 67 until the present, until he passed in 2020, worked extensively in the theatrical and musical worlds as a director, librettist, scenarist, and manager. Married since 1981 to his first and only wife, Carol Ann Pastore, who passed away approximately 2011, and presently, and until her illness and passing, was a teacher of ballet at the Boston Conservatory of Music. In 1967, Bob began to study the Sacco and Vanzetti case, originally for use as an opera libretto, and we'll hear more about that in this program from Leonard Lerman, who joins us from New York, but ultimately as a field for historical research. Bob's area of interest expanded to include Italian anarchism in America and anarchism in general. On these topics, Bob lectured, gave seminars, taught courses, organized conferences, translated materials, wrote articles and reviews. When he wrote the resume, Bob was at work on a book about Sacco and Vanzetti. He was at this time of writing operations manager of the Pro Arte Chamber Orchestra of Boston, stage manager for the Harvard Chamber Orchestra, and executive director of the Dante Alighieri Italian Cultural Center in Cambridge. Foreign languages spoken, fluent Italian, reading knowledge of French, German, and Spanish, and just a whole line of different organizations where he worked directing, stage managing, and operations managing, and film consultant and executive director. A list of research papers and different historical events that he hosted or helped organize, both in the music field as well as in the field of historical research. It's quite a long list of things. That's a little snippet of what Bob was all about. But Jerry and I just going through all his things, and I didn't know Bob as well as maybe some of you or Jerry knew Bob. What I knew that Bob would come around here whenever we did a Sacco and Vanzetti related event, and in later years we would collaborate with the Sacco Vanzetti Commemoration Society in helping or hosting events on August 23rd, the anniversary of the execution of Sacco and Vanzetti. So what I'd like to do is turn on my phone to join this meeting so that we can walk around the auditorium and talk to Jerry a little bit about some marvelous things he has in display cases, and just get a closer look at Bob Datilio and what he was about. This meeting is being live streamed, and we will join with audio. And we will stay as co-hosts, and we will mute the other one.
Is Jerry there, Dean, or just on your phone? You're muted, Dean. Can't hear you.
Now, okay. So I think we're ready to do this. Let's turn this around. So we see the first thing. I love this. You look into the screen and you see 1,000 laptops. But we start our walk around the auditorium. But first, we turn this down so we don't have an echo. I hope you can all still hear me. And I hope you can see me. I hope I've spotlighted the right thing. And we're going to start with these display cases. And we have Jerry Kaplan. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, good morning.
This is my chance to express, just from the depths of my heart, the incredible appreciation, not from me personally, but from this church for what you have done to organize Bob Datilio's collection here, and to tell us what it's about and how it is important, and the importance of it. I will mention to you has also been underlined by Professor Michelle Fazio. I don't know if Michelle is with us today, but she took a tour of our Sacco and Vanzetti room and what Jerry has done there. And she was just so blown away that she was immediately full of ideas about what we can do there and grants that we could possibly get to really make order, not only of that, but that it would bleed into our 5th floor, which contains 102 years of Community Church of Boston archives, which are in fairly disorganized state. They've been relegated to broom closets for too long, but now they're spread out on the 5th floor. I'll say before we start this that you're all welcome to come on Wednesdays. We have an open house and we do a tour, not only of the Sacco and Vanzetti room, but also of the 5th floor. And hopefully at some future moment, we'll be able to do the 4th floor, which has a new tenant, and they are called the History Project. The History Project documents, preserves, and archives Boston's LGBT history. And they're a wonderful new tenant. We're looking forward to starting to volunteer with them and work with them on their projects there. So Jerry, tell us about the Black Rose.
Well, Black Rose was a magazine that Bob was involved with. It was a collective that was active from the magazine group was active from 1979 to 1987. There was another group. Actually, they started out the same group and split up into 2. And there was a lecture group as well that put on lectures, 4 or 5 lectures every season. Well, the spring and the fall, until I believe 1993. Bob was very proud of the design and content of this magazine. As you can see, it's quite well done. Yeah.
Black Rose, you can come here and find the entire collection of their entire history here at the church. What is the lantern?
The lantern was
1929.
yeah.
You can see it there.
It was a magazine put out by Aldino Felicani, who was the treasurer of the Sacco and Vanzetti Defense Committee and a friend of Vanzetti's. And he was a printer, so he printed up all of their flyers, quite a few of them, and their pamphlets and all of their, sort of all the ephemera. And he also published pamphlets like we have here. And Contra Corrente was a magazine that he put out up until his death, I believe, around 1966. And it was an anti-fascist magazine. That was its focus. And what we have here in this display case, in addition to that, are some of the other pamphlets that the Italian anarchists, those associated with Sacco and Vanzetti, put out, like this one here, and this one over here.
L'attentato di Matteo Morral and Se dovessi parlare agli elettori, East Boston, Massachusetts.
And this is a book that he has that was published in New York by Carlo Tresca, who's sort of one of the main people within the anarchist movement, especially the Italian anarchist movement, and also an anti-fascist who was assassinated in the 40s. Some think because of his anti-fascist work. And over here we have a book by Luigi Galliani. Now, Luigi Galliani was the followers of Galliani, including Sacco and Vanzetti, read his newspaper, Cronica Servisiva, which is very influential among the anarchists, particularly here in Boston, but also in the rest of the country and in Europe. And if we go upstairs, I'll show you an issue of it. Now, Bob, among his vast collection, has the only full set, complete set of Chronica Servisiva. And when the Library of Congress wanted to scan it, they scanned his copy only because he has the one complete set. And we have that upstairs. And hopefully that will also be donated or at least
Yeah.
offered to the Boston Public Library.
Back here, we have some posters. I will also take a sweep around the room to show you the Diane Esmond display of art paintings all around us. And then we will take a little walk around the book collection. Here's a pile of books about the Vatican. I'll just mention that we gave away probably about 20 boxes of books in Italian that went to an Italian bookstore in the North End, whose name I don't recall.
I Am Books.
I Am Books. If you're interested in the Italian language books, this is the category of tip of the iceberg. I brought down one box of books about film. There's 10 more upstairs. I brought one box of books about theater. There's 10 more upstairs. And down here is, oh, yes, I'm supposed to do this horizontal. A box of books about music. There's 10 more upstairs. That's why I call it tip of the iceberg. Here's some books by Daniel Aron, who was a longtime professor at MIT, who was a good friend of Bob's. And I don't know much about him, but there's a bunch of books by and about him too. Oh, I want to mention that it's holiday time, almost solstice, and we're going to be, as soon as Luis gets back, decorating in the beautiful green and red of Maya weavers from Sololá, Guatemala. And those will all be wherever we have space to bedeck this place with green and red. I hope you will join us for some of our December holiday events to be able to enjoy this auditorium in its holiday splendor. Here's all fiction books written by Bob. Here's women authors. I'm especially fond of some that I found recently that are written by Isak Dinesen, who's a Danish author who lived in Africa, in Kenya. Out of Africa, here's an very early edition of the book Out of Africa, which became a movie as well. These are especially noted because they're authors that had some connection to the Sacco Vanzetti case. There's Catherine Ann Porter, and these folders here are just correspondence that Bob had with the Catherine Ann Porter Society. There's Mary McCarthy, there's Muriel Earl Spark, and others as well. So here's the fiction. Here's one that I think will go out the door. It's all about astrology, witchcraft, and the occult. Interested in that? Come see us before they get donated somewhere. We also have the classics, Greece and Rome, Sophocles, Euripides, Aeschylus, Virgil, a whole bunch more books. These are all sets of books. That's Charles Dickens. It's, I think you're getting the picture. Now we come to his beloved anarchist flag. We took a picture of it and had it on his memorial backdrop with his beloved plaque, which lives in this auditorium of Vanzetti. Here's our Sacco and Vanzetti Memorial Award list. Now there's Tina Modotti. I'd never heard of her, but she's a remarkable photographer, an Italian-American early 20th century photographer who went to Mexico with Edward Weston and quickly became a photographer in her own right. This is one just amazing image of Tina Modotti. Bob studied Tina Modotti. I think he was quite smitten with her as well, because there's like 30 books by and about Tina Modotti. Upstairs,
Here is something we found in the attic. These are maybe liquor bottles. I'm not sure. You see the top comes off, but they are commemoratives from maybe the 200th anniversary of the US independence. Somebody was really into these, and there's a whole bunch more down there. We found these in a trunk in the attic. Maybe they're really valuable. Who knows? I'm not really that interested, but here is a beautiful Ralph Fasanella print that came from Bob's wall. It's a little bit yellowed, but it says Ralph Fasanella 1974. And it's the 119th print out of a run of 250, I think. And it's if Ralph Fasanella did Lawrence quite a bit, Lawrence, Massachusetts. There's a lot of his work in the museum there, in the mills. And this is about either strikers or May Day. It's a May Day parade, maybe. It says United May Day Committee. Here it says Negro and White Unity. And here's an ad for Lucky Strike. And here's some images of Jefferson, Lincoln, Douglas, and FOR. What's FOR?
FDR.
Fellowship of Reconciliation, maybe something like that. Anyway, beautiful Ralph Fasanella.
That's FDR.
Frame this. Oh, FDR. You're right. Okay, FDR. We'll frame this sometime. It's about a $500 frame job, so it'll get done eventually. So we come now to some of his personal effects. Here's some people that Bob worked with. The first one I point out is Stephen Jonas. There's an enormous poetry collection up on the 3rd floor. Stephen Jonas was a prison poet, and the way we found out about it was that in here are a bunch of materials that looks like that Bob compiled after Jonas's passing, and there's a number of books by him in the poetry section upstairs. Satya al-Husari is a Syrian chess master who lived with Bob for a number of years. And I've been in touch with him because a bunch of his things were still there in the house, and we were able to make contact. Satya is a chess master, and he taught chess while he was here. He spent maybe, let's say, 5 or 6 years in the US. He now lives in Romania. Here we have maybe some personal items that need to go back to the Datilio family. And here we have a guy named Bill Ravanese, and some of you might know more than I do. Bob worked on, this is a gallery photograph display. Bob was deeply into photography. Bill Ravanese, who did photography about the effects of asbestos on asbestos workers. Here is Bob's brother, Albert. Albert owned a sausage company. He passed away in around 2001. Albert was very different from Bob. He liked to live it up. He liked to go to Vegas. There's a photograph of Tony Orlando and Dawn in Vegas. And we have these photos from Bob's classmates in Medford High School, just remembrances. And here's some Japanese stuff that Carol, might have been from Carol. She collected some beautiful Japanese things, including a kimono. I'll show you real quick this kimono. Just can't get enough of it. It's just such beautiful things here. Now we'll go over to right over here where we have a pile of passports. It's like, how can you possibly throw away a passport that's from
the early part of the 20th century that was issued by the United States of America Department of State to Dominic Datilio, who's Bob's father, and just a lot of personal things. This is photographs of Carol. She was a dancer. She taught dance at Boston Conservatory. Photographs of Carol. Lots of keys, Polaroid cameras. Bob was a consummate photographer. On and on. So I want to sit down for a moment and plug in. This tells me that I have a low battery, which is too bad because I was going to take you upstairs to see some of the collection up above. So I'm going to plug it in, and maybe this would be a good moment to have Leonard Lerman come on in. Leonard, thanks for joining us. And I'm going to put you in the spotlight and turn up our sound here. Can you hear me, Leonard?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dean. Yeah, I will have to leave at about 12:15, but I'm enjoying the program so far, and I will enjoy it until I have to leave. Thank you for giving me a moment to speak. I've been in touch with Jerry and with David Rothhauser, who wrote first that he would not be able to be here this morning. Then he wrote that he would be able to be here, but I don't think he's arrived yet. But David is he there? David Rothhauser? In person? Oh, good. Well, unmute and say hello. So I believe they're the only members of the Sacco and Vanzetti Commemoration Society that actually watched the opera that we launched on video on October 30th. I really can't urge people enough to watch that, including you, Dean. It's an achievement of 45 years of work. It actually, I was looking through the biographies of Blitzstein by Howard Pollack and Eric Gordon. Neither one of them mentions Bob Datilio, but my biography does. And in fact, Bob Datilio is mentioned on page 495 of my book about Blitzstein, in which it says that Blitzstein owned a court record of the Sacco and Vanzetti case, 6 volumes published by Henry Holt in 1931, and Blitzstein noted on September 12, 1959, a copy is owned by Osmond Frankel at my disposal. That court record was reprinted in 1969 by P.P. Appel in Mamaroneck with a chronology by Robert Datilio. And that's from 1969. So I think that's probably one of the earliest writings that he did on Sacco and Vanzetti. You mentioned that he became interested in the case after Blitzstein's death in 1967. And he mentioned in several places that Bob Datilio, was interested in writing a libretto for an opera about them, that he felt it was definitely an opera. In his interview with David Rothhauser, the last thing he says that when David asks him, why is the case so fascinating? He says, because it's an opera. And it is an opera, you can watch it. You can go to tinyurl.com/s-v2022/playlist, and that's where you can see the Zoom that we did to launch the video, with introductions and discussions and Q&A. And you can also watch the entire opera, which took 60 hours to subtitle, but it was worth it. People really are able to access it and view it and enjoy it much better with the subtitles than without. I also wanted to mention, and I put in the chat, the major writing of Bob Datilio that I was involved in, which is actually, it's not a writing, it was a conference, which I then transcribed and posted on December 1st, 1995, in Boston. I forget the hotel there it was. It was the, let me see if I have that now. No, but it was a symposium of the National Opera Association convention meeting in Boston, and Howard Zinn, Bob DiTilio, and Paul Myers-Chaley came up from Pennsylvania. He was the first biographer of Blitzstein to write a thesis on Blitzstein while Blitzstein was still alive in 65. He wrote that thesis. And the three of them were there on a panel with me talking about Sacco and Vanzetti, the importance of the case, the importance of Blitzstein, and the importance of the opera that Blitzstein had begun about them. And a lot of the talk that we had, that Bob and I had, centered on approaches to the case that were different between the anarchists and the communists. Blitzstein, like Leon Hellman, his close friend and collaborator on Regina, had been in the Communist Party, although they had left it in the 1950s. But they still espoused the ideals of it. And there was a kind of a conflict between communists and anarchists in the case, which was interesting. And Bob wanted to explore that and did explore it somewhat in the symposium. Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, who was the one of the co-founders of Community Church, Elizabeth Glendower Evans was one of the co-founders of Community Church. Elizabeth Glendower Evans and Elizabeth Gurley Flynn was one of the founders of the American Communist Party and of the Civil Liberty, ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. They were very, very active in the case. And Flynn was actually the one that brought in Fred Moore, who was Sacco's attorney, and who made the case a cause célèbre internationally, and said he was going to put the bar of Massachusetts on trial, and angered Sacco very much, because Sacco was not against some sort of deal where he could actually have his life spared, and Moore was grandstanding, and Sacco fired him unceremoniously at a certain point. That figures in the opera by Anton Coppola, not so much in the Blitzstein or Lerman opera. But anyhow, the opera was finally given its staged and orchestral premiere on September 10th and 11th of this year. And October 30th, we launched the video. And I want to tell everybody that the opera is going, I don't know if it will win, nobody knows, but it's going to be nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. That is definitely true. And we will know this week exactly who's going to nominate it, but it's going to be nominated by one person or another that I'm in touch with. And we're asking people to watch it. We're asking people to send comments. We got very nice comments from Jerry and from David. Is David Rothhauser there? Can he speak?
Yes, he was. He has some comments as well. So David,
please.
I'm going to spotlight
this correspondence
again, and yeah, take it away, David.
Where do you want me?
Right here.
Here. Yeah.
Folks, say hello to David Rothhauser.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, David.
I have some notes I prepared. I probably don't need most of them, but just to keep my head in order. I've known Bob since 1972. Bob was I was doing research on my graduate thesis at Boston University about the Sacco Vanzetti case. And Bob was the second person I interviewed regarding the Sacco Vanzetti case. The first person I interviewed was Sarah Ehrman. Many of you might not know that Sarah was the widow of Herbert Ehrman, who wrote a fantastic book, The Case That Will Not Die. And Herbert was a defense attorney for the Sacco Vanzetti case. He came in late on the case, 1925, I believe, and he stayed until nearly the end of the case. But in any case, when I went to interview Sarah, the very first words she said to me were, "David, I warn you, if you get involved in this case, it will follow you for the rest of your life." And she's true, it did, or at least up till now. Who knows what the rest of my life will be? In any case, after interviewing Sarah, I was put in touch with Bob. That I can't remember. I think it was the Reverend Lothrop from the Community Church of Boston who introduced me to Bob, and I interviewed Bob about the case. I soon realized that Bob was a brilliant mind regarding the Sacco Vanzetti case, and probably brilliant mind in many other ways. Over the years, we became fast friends, and we would meet frequently. We would collaborate on different programs, both at the Dante Alighieri Society, the IAMS bookstore, and many other places, doing plays that I wrote, doing plays that Bob wrote, doing musical presentations, working with a variety of people at the Dante, eventually showing my film there a number of times called The Diary of Sacco and Vanzetti. And Bob was very instrumental in helping me with that film. I think the first filming we did of it was at the cordage factory in Plymouth. And I had a group of people who were shooting it in 16 millimeter film at that time. And on the first day we were shooting there, this man arrived. I didn't even know Bob at that time. And it was Bob Datilio observing what we were doing at the cordage plant. And as I said earlier, we became involved in many things. We never really argued about the case. I didn't take a point of view and say, well, this is right, that's wrong, this is right, that's wrong. No, I just listened to Bob. He had all the information, and I was happy to absorb whatever I could of it. Like I say, he was a walking encyclopedia about the Sacco and Vanzetti case. Bob always extended a helping hand, introducing me to Italian journalists who eventually published a story in the Italian press about the development of my film. And that was all due because Bob had introduced me to them, and we kept in touch. Others he introduced me to were Judge Peter Agnes, who has worked forever also on the Sacco Vanzetti case, and members, of course, of the Dante Alighieri Society. And Michelle Fazio, who some of you may recall, has written a book about Sacco and Vanzetti, and more about women's involvement in radical activities, I believe. And Sacco and Vanzetti is part of it, but I think that was her work. On several occasions, we met in New York, and we met people involved in the Sacco Vanzetti story, and they supported a public reading of my full-length play, Mr. Sacco and Mr. Vanzetti, in New York City. In Connecticut, Bob invited me to a rehearsal of Mark Blitzstein's opera that Leonard Lerman talked about. And years later, and Leonard himself conducted the opera at Lehman College in New York. I was watching the opera. It's very good. If you have an opportunity to see it, I recommend it, highly recommend it. It's beautifully done and very powerfully done. Then, through Bob, I met a man by the name of Luigi Botta, who translated and published my film in a massive archive of material from writers and historians worldwide in the Province of Cuneo book, Il presente e la storia. Both Jerry Kaplan and Leonard Lerman are also included in that book. Bob and I developed a fondness for each other, and that grew from hello, Bob, hello, David, to hello, Roberto, hello, Davido. And I remember remarking to him one day, Roberto, you are the #1 historian in the world on the Sacco and Vanzetti case. And his response to me was, in the universe, Davido, in the universe. Anyway, that's just a few memories that I have of my relationship with Bob, and it's very, very moving and important. Thank you.
That's beautiful, David, and your film is marvelous. And you know, of course, that Peter Miller wanted to work with Bob DiTilio, but Bob refused to do it unless he would agree to make it into a 10-part series or something. And Peter's film was much shorter than that. And everybody's work on Sacco and Vanzetti has to be shorter than what Bob DiTilio envisioned and could have done if he'd lived another 100 years, right?
Right. Right.
Well, can I say something? Can I ask a question? Could Leonard Lerman?
absolutely, Steve. We're about to take a tour of the 3rd floor that has the Sacco and Vanzetti collection.
It's too bad.
But Steve, go ahead. Join
I
us.
just want to ask
Lerman.
Leonard if he could repeat the where the opera can be found.
Yes, I posted it in the chat, but it's there. It's tinyurl.com or https:// if you need it, tinyurl.com/s as in Sacco -v as in Vanzetti, s-v 2022, the year that it was done. And then you can put the words complete subtitled, or you can put the word playlist. If you put the word playlist, you'll get not only the video itself, but you'll get all of the commentary that we did on October 30th, as we had people coming in from Israel and Bahrain and especially Italy. There's now a Sacco and Vanzetti museum in Torre Maggiore, Italy, founded in September. And the director of that museum, who had been the mayor that we met in Torre Maggiore 21 years ago, sent a message which he had Google translated into English from Italian, and that's a part of that video. So yeah, I hope you can read it in the chat. Thank you.
Steve, I will make sure you get that information. So what we'd like to do now is take you up to the 3rd floor with this machine here. I hope this works. It was telling me that I almost had no charge, but I've been charging it and I've 21%. So Jerry and I are going up to the 3rd floor, and we're going to give you a tour of the Bob DiTilio Library in the Sacco Vanzetti room. Okay, you'll see us walk up the stairs. And folks, if you would like to join us upstairs, please do. It'll be pretty crowded, but it'll be great. I think they can hear me. Okay. I hope you can hear me. Folks who'd like to stay here, please stay in the auditorium or come join us up the stairs. Go up to the 3rd floor. Where's Jerry go? Is it open? Yes. This is the 3rd floor. I hope you can hear me. And this is what Jerry has done with this room. One big union, IWW. This is Order Out of Chaos. This is our poetry collection. This is the beginnings of our history collection. This is all of Boston interest, New England and Boston. And Jerry, tell us a little bit about what's on this shelf here.
Well, these are mostly the anarchist newspapers, both in English and Italian. And down here,
magazines, here's issue 1907 of Chronica, I mentioned before. Here's a poster that was during the case.
Central Opera House. You know that in our archives, the very first event that's listed is a Sacco and Vanzetti supper in 1921. And it's this book that we've compiled that has everything that ever happened here for 102 years. But that's the very first item.
Where was the Central Opera House?
I have no idea. It's on 205 East Street, East 67th Street, probably in New York. Yeah, in New York. Yeah. Here's Il Martiri di Chicago. Now we want to give you a little look at this piece of beautiful furniture. This came from.
Can't hear you, Dean.
This is her, if I'm not mistaken, great uncle.
Dean, we cannot hear you.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Maybe I had my
Yes.
finger on the microphone. This is Michel Fazio's great uncle's bookcase. He was an anarchist intellectual. We will hear more. We've just gotten this here and put it together. There will be a plaque, which Michel is elaborating now. All the books in this piece of furniture are Sacco and Vanzetti books. And over here, we will take you to Jerry's main study and work area. And we have a little tour here. Camisas negras. Is that Spanish? Luce Fabiano. We have Sposo di Guerra. Come on, glasses. Casa del Il Martello, New York. Marion Craig Wentworth. We have Armando Borghi, Mussolini in Camida. And we have another Borghi, Armando Borghi. Oh, it's already, battery is low. Armando Borghi, Misia Sociale alla Cooper Union, con introduzione di Malatesta. These are all boxes still to be gone through and compiled and ordered, made order out of. You see some posters that are on the walls. And here's another poster. I want to give you a little quick look. Eli, let me get by here. An amazing part of this collection. This is its own room. This is all photography books, mostly early 20th century black and white photographers like Edward Weston, like Tina Modotti. This is all Tina Modotti, and like Paul Strand, a bunch of Paul Strands. And there's photography and art and architecture. It's just remarkable. This is my favorite room to come and just have a look at all of these large format coffee table size books of photographs. And just a quick look in the back room of what'll be Community Church's library on this floor. And this is all books by and about anarchism and anarchists. We have Emma Goldman, we have lots of others, Bakunin, here's a bunch of more similar left-oriented books. We've sort of very roughly categorized them. All this is Spanish Civil War. This is all about, here is Marx, Engels, communism, socialism. Over here, we have a whole section that is labor unions, labor leaders, strikes. Here is a few books on Eugene V. Debs. Back in this room over here is boxes and boxes and boxes of books that we will be eventually making order out of or getting out of here or something. Bob was totally fascinated with Ezra Pound. There's about 4 boxes of books of Ezra Pound poetry, books by and about Ezra Pound. This is all biography, autobiography, memoirs, letters, essays. This is all history books. So you get a sense of the scope of this whole thing. These are all books that we haven't really collated or categorized or decided what to do with. Just an invitation to come join us. There's a room back there that used to be filled with the Italian books that I told you that went to the bookstore in the North End. So there you are. I think all the people that are up here are going to stay up here. This is just such a fascinating thing. Meanwhile, I'll take you virtual folks down the stairs again.
Dean, I wonder if Ezra Pound belongs more at the Boston Public Library than at Community Church. He was, after all, a fascist, no?
Over here. Maybe the final stop in this tour is cookbooks. We have maybe 100 cookbooks to figure out what's going to happen to. This goes on forever. I'm going to turn off this phone because its battery is very low and it has echo issues with. Leave me. There we go. Okay. Now we're.
Dean, can you hear me?
Okay. We're back.
Dean, can you hear me?
I'm back in front of the laptop and nobody else came back down. Here all by myself. They liked it so much up there. So anyway, I'm with you folks. If there's anyone else who wants to join in and talk about Bob or talk about Carol Ann Pastore, his beloved wife passed away about maybe 8 or 9 years before Bob did, and he was never quite the same, I would say. And we have some, what was it, Laura, maybe 10 boxes of books about dance that we delivered to Laura Hausman, who lives in the Upper East Side of New York and is a dancer herself, and now runs a nonprofit that offers scholarships, dance study to underserved young people. Laura, are you there? Would you like to tell us how those books are doing?
Well, yes, Dean, can you hear me? I'm not a
Yes, we can.
tech savvy. In fact, I wanted to be known how generous Dean was to single-handedly, I think, bring countless boxes of Carol Ann Pastore Detilio's dance books to New York City. It couldn't have been done without Dean doing that. And I want him to know how much that benefited and will continue to benefit so many students who are from the underserved community. They really have so little. They have no classes other than those donated to them. And for them to have a book on dance is really a luxury. And because Carol Ann had countless copies of the Gale Grant Dictionary of classical ballet terms, so many of the students got one. So I'm very happy that Dean facilitated this passing on with Carol Ann's ballet dictionaries to these students.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Dean.
And we will continue to look for suitable repositories for more parts of this collection of books and of Bob's research materials. I can't emphasize enough how this eventuality just has really changed our focus in a difficult way, but mostly in a really beautiful way, that we have these books and we have this new sort of responsibility on our back of really carrying on the legacy of what Bob's work was around the Sacco and Vanzetti case, of collaborating with the Sacco Vanzetti Commemoration Society. That's a group here in Boston mostly, but also in Chile. Sergio Reyes is one very active member, and we are committed to continuing to do those August 23rd events and have speakers and lecturers and artists participate in working on the legacy of Sacco and Vanzetti. We are also committed to something that's been elusive about that case, which is making it a public art display. There's been a lot of energy, which Bob really worked on hard, on putting our plaque, a version of our plaque out in public display, perhaps in the North End, perhaps somewhere else. There's also been efforts to come up with a new piece of art for public display. In the early years, it was the actual official city of Boston that was against it, and maybe the state of Massachusetts, because well, it was commemorating enormous, awful miscarriage of justice, and who wants to have that on public display? Well, we think there's nothing more important than to learn from horrific mistakes. And my recent takeaway is that we haven't learned a thing, because there's the Holy Land Foundation. And it's just a tip of the iceberg that we are finding out about that horrible case, and we will learn more. It's just incredible that those men, for doing charity for Gaza and the West Bank, were pegged as terrorists and scapegoated. And John Ashcroft made this big announcement. Do you remember that we had a Sacco Vanzetti honoree whose name was Lynn Stewart? Lynn Stewart was a public defender in the city of Boston, defended a lot of some of the worst, most difficult cases in the city, and one of her defendants was the sheikh of the mosque where the first trade center bombings were attributed to, supposedly been inspired or hatched. Anyway, she was also accused terrorism, and it was John Ashcroft, the same guy who on the Jay Leno show announced that she had been indicted, and went on to make these public announcements about these other scapegoats that needed to be found. And we'll find out more about this on December 18th when we welcome the families of the Holy Land Foundation, and we work to get them freed. One of them, Shukri Abu Bakr, is serving 65 years. He's an elderly man now. His daughters, who are young mothers of their own children, will be joining us. This is such an important part of community church. It's in our DNA, and some churches have that symbol of capital punishment, the cross, on their walls and in their iconography. It's sort of similar that's what we have in our history as well. These two victims of the most horrific injustice, and more victims of horrific injustice who have received our award, like Leonard Peltier. Some of us were at the day of mourning 2 days ago on Thanksgiving, or Thanks-Taking Day. We gave it a new name, Thanks-Taking Day, where we were remembering with many members of the tribes of New England what really happened on that day, right there at Plymouth Rock and Coles Hill. And we chanted to free Leonard Peltier. There's other award winners who are in the same situation, Mumia Abu Jamal. And another one we mentioned who was freed. His name is Arnie King, and he is with his family after 45 years in prison. We advocated on his behalf for a very long time, and it's a beautiful thing that he is now with his family. So, folks, I wonder if there's anybody else in our midst who would like to have a word on the virtual platform. All of our physical attendees were so fascinated with upstairs that they're still up there. There's about 10 people up there with Jerry getting the guided tour. And we can't emphasize enough, if you want to come to community church on a Wednesday for our luncheon and our tours, we would be glad to show you around and tell you about our big dreams for this building, for turning it into a state-of-the-art model of energy efficiency for the city of Boston, and the efforts that we've made on that behalf, on that trip, on that journey to efficiency, and lots of other things we'd like to share with you. Come join us on a Wednesday at noon. Pupusas for lunch, and then a tour. If you come in the next 3 weeks, you can also see Diane Esmond's art exhibition that fills this room, as well as lots of books. You can make it a book swap. You can take a book for whatever you would like to donate to the Community Church of Boston, whatever you're able to afford. And there will also be, as of December 18th, a remarkable display of Palestinian crafts and books. The shop is called Tree of Life, and it's on Martha's Vineyard. And Linda Cohen, its owner, brought a beautiful display of crafts when we had a Palestine-oriented event in early October, and she will be back with us again for December 18th event. It promises to be a remarkable thing. We'll be featuring Miko Peled.
Dean, it's Judy Walcott.
Judy, hi, Judy.
I've lost you somehow. All I can see is myself. here, but I just want to say what an amazing job you have done.
Let me
Oh, my
spotlight you.
gosh.
This is Judy.
Right.
Can I tell them about you, Judy, too?
Sure, yeah. I got, okay, yeah.
Judy's grandmother was one of the founders of Community Church. This is Mrs. Gertrude Winslow, and she's on the plaque that we have framed here. That's our charter document. She's one of the signers, one of 7 signers, and she worked with Community Church for many years and was on many boards. And anyway, welcome, Judy. Thanks for joining us from Gloucester area.
Well, you've done such an amazing job. I can't believe it. Because I mean, I was there, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, and saw what you've done. And now with all of Bob's stuff, it's an enormous undertaking. And just, you've just done a great job. And I know there's a lot more to do.
You're right about that. There's no question. It's just a lot of work, but we're ready to take it on, and we're happy about it. And a lot of it is culling out what we don't need, and a lot of it is also just collating and organizing what we do have, what we want to keep here.
So let me ask you, every Wednesday
Every Wednesday at noon, we have luncheon, and then we have a tour if there's anybody who wants a tour.
Okay, great. That's great.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Great to see you.
That's true of all the rest of you as well. So do join us. I had a little song I wanted to close with, written by my friend Bob Franke. And it's called Thanksgiving Eve. And I'm going to sing it a cappella because I don't have a guitar mic. And with that, we will call the virtual event a close. It goes like this. It's so easy to dream of the days gone by. It's a hard thing to think of the times to come. But the grace to accept every moment as a gift is a gift that is given to some. What can you do with your days but work and hope? Let your dreams bind your work to your play. What can you do with each moment of your life but love till you've loved it away? Love till you've loved it away. There are sorrows enough for the whole world's end. There are no guarantees but the grave. But the lives that we live and the times we spend are a treasure too precious to save. What can we do with our days but work and hope? Let our dreams bind our work to our play. What can we do with each moment of our lives but love till we've loved it away? Love till we've loved it away. As it was, so it is, and it shall so be. And it shall be while lips that kiss have breath. Many waters indeed only nurture love's seed, and its flower overshadows the power of death. What can we do with our days but work and hope? Let our dreams bind our work to our play. What can we do with each moment of our lives but love till we've loved it away? Love till we've loved it away. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Steve and Judy and Laura Hausman and Kevin and Lee. Those who are still with us, a bunch have signed off already, but Charlie, thanks for your tech help. Dorothy Weitzman, we miss you. Love to see you sometime soon. It looks like Alan Clemens is with us on the phone as well. And thank you all for joining us today and every Sunday at Community Church of Boston. Reverend Irene Monroe next Sunday, Calla Walsh the Sunday after that, and the Holy Land Foundation 5 family, as well as Sami Al-Arian. and Lena Alarian and Miko Peled will join us on December 18th. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dean.
Love you and see you on a
Thank you,
Wednesday.
Dean.
Jerry.
Thank you.
fantastic
Wonderful
work.
program. Wonderful.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bob Datilio, presente, presente, presente.